Mike Pachelli here. Thanks for tuning into this lesson. I'll be talking about Taxman as recorded by the Beatles on April 20th, 21st, and 22nd of 1966. Now in 1966, because they were in the highest tax bracket, the Beatles were paying over 90% of their earnings to their government after a certain amount. So when George Harrison found out about this, well, he wrote Taxman. But George wanted a little help with the lyrics for the song. And, in those days, George was on his own as a songwriter. But he asked John to help with the lyrics, and it's reported that John grudgingly accepted the invitation. So John was the one who added the wit and humor to George's original lyrics. They go in the studio on April 20th, and they work for 12 hours that day on Taxman and Your Bird Can Sing, but there was no keepers that day. Next day, on April 21st, they go in and they give Taxman 10 hours of work. Now, in those days, George Martin wasn't a big fan of George Harrison songs because since George was kind of on his own, the songs took longer to record, and there was only so much time allotted to a Beatles recording session. But that made George Harrison very, very uncomfortable. Nevertheless, they did the rhythm track, and there was no John on the rhythm track, just George on guitar, Paul on bass, and Ringo on drums. They did 11 takes. George did not sing live, but after they determined that track 11 was the keeper, George overdubbed his lead vocal. Then he double-tracked his lead vocal. John and Paul did those background vocals that go, anybody got a bit of money, anybody got a bit of money? George also overdubbed some guitar fills on the latter part of the song, and Ringo overdubbed a tambourine. The song is a little odd in that the verses are 13 measures and the bridge is 9 measures, which is kind of Johnish in that, John was very good at subtracting measures sometimes and adding measures, so I think George was paying attention to John's songwriting prowess there. But George couldn't get a good guitar solo that day. He tried for 2 hours and he couldn't get the solo. So George Martin was in the control room just having a hissy fit, again making George Harrison very uncomfortable. George splits, and George Martin suggests that Paul McCartney try to do the guitar solo. So Paul was undoubtedly paying attention to what George was trying to do, and Paul goes down and gets a ferocious guitar solo recorded in like a couple of takes. No doubt paying homage to what George was trying to do, because there's a bit of Indian influence in that guitar solo. I'll explain it a little more, but basically on Paul's run down, he's using the major seventh and a dominant seventh on the way up of the same kind of lick, and that gives it an Indian influence. They're back in the studio on April 22nd, and Ringo overdubs a cowbell, and they get rid of those background vocals, and that's where John and Paul sing, "Ah, Mr. Wilson, ah, Mr. Heath," who were the prime minister and the leader of the Labour Party in those days. Let's see. Fun facts too, they may have recorded those new background vocals on the tambourine track, because the tambourine track kind of mysteriously disappears when those vocals come in. So it's a little weird. They go to mix it on April 27th, and the initial ending of the song was just 3 chords, bing, bang, bong. And they didn't find that sufficient, so they decided to fly in the solo section that McCartney had recorded again on the end for the fade out. And they also flew in, Paul had on an earlier session in May did the 1, 2, 3, 4, so they stuck that in there also as an overdub. But if you listen close to the beginning of the song, you could hear that there's actually Paul counting in when they recorded the rhythm track also. Any road. Let's see, it was released on August 8th of 66 on the Revolver album, and it was the first track on the Revolver album, which was, quite a heady feat for a George Harrison song, so touche on that because they made the right choice. Well, I think that's the Taxman backstory, so let's get started. George Harrison is playing his Sonic Blue Fender Stratocaster on Taxman, and a lot like this one. And to my ear, he's probably playing through an AC50 because it breaks up a little more. I'm using my 63 AC30 with a little overdrive from a Jetter GS124 to get the tone. Now, you'll just need 6 chords to play the rhythm track for Taxman. You need a D7, looks like this. you need a D7 raised 9 that looks like this. That chord is sometimes also referred to as a major minor chord because it has a major third and a minor third, but jazz bows call it a raised 9, so that's what I call it. You'll need a C7, looks like this. You'll need a G7, looks like this. And after the solo, you need a G7 raised 9, looks like this. And at the very end of the song, you need an F7. So those are all the chords you need to play the rhythm. Now the rhythm is very simple. You simply play on beat 2 and beat 4 for the most part. Beat 2 is a half note and beat 4 is a quarter note. So the basic rhythm is 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay? But those hits in the verses are on the D7 raised 9, and they come on measures 3 and measure 7. And the hits are like 2 hits of the raised 9 chord, and then you get the 4, beat 4 on the D7. So a verse would sound like this. Let me get my trusty metronome. It's around 136 is the rhythm. So a verse sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very simple, very effective, and fun to do. Now on that bridge, you start on D7. You know, if you drive a car, and the call and response. So it's D7, 3 measures of D7, like. Down to C7. Repeat that. Now to lead in to the guitar solo, you play like C in fifths, like a C and a G, in kind of like loosely played eighth notes. Slide it up to the D and then continue with the D7. So let me do the bridge. So again, Mr. Metronome, help us out. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And you're into the solo. Thank you, Ringo. It was just like him. On the solo, you stay on the, just like a verse pretty much. You stay on D7 for the solo. Repeat that. Then they sing coming out of the solo, which is kind of like the last part of we'd call it verse 3, is where the G7 raised 9 comes in. So it comes back into C7. And then we're ready for verses 4 and 5. Now on verse 5, coming out of the C is when you go to the F. So this is verse 5. Charts and tabs at MikePachelli.com if you want to get it exact. I wrote out every measure. But coming out of the verse 5, C7, G7, D7, to that F7. Right? And that's the only difference, or the only time that F7 comes in. And, you know, basically for the fade, you play the same way. You play just kind of like a verse and just fade out. Just a really strong, cool, funky rhythm track played by George Harrison. So that's all you'll need to do it exactly like he did. George Harrison plays some cool fills, some tasty riffage after the guitar solo section, and for the most part, it's like this. So it's just a D on the 5th string, a D on the 3rd string, and then hammers from the 5/7 of the D string and 5/7 of the G string. So he actually plays on that G7 raise 9 coming out of the solo. He plays 2 Ds. He goes, which may or may not have been a mistake, but it's on the record. But the main part of the riffs starts on beat, measure 4 after the solo. So the C7, the G7, D7, and then he starts. Now he doesn't play on those kicks. So basically it's like he stops. It's then the kicks. Ba, ba, ba. Then he repeats. Then that kick happens without any fills. When it goes down to the C, he starts on beat 2, so it's 1, 1. Then on the G7, it's and then he plays kind of like a Hendrixy riff because it's like, and he continues that for many measures, and that almost sounds like Purple Haze, right? Because every time he hits that F, he kind of bends it a little sharp. Oops. Come on. And he plays over the kicks this time. He's continues that riff. When it goes down to the C, he plays and the G and back to the D. Now when they go down to F7, George plays this. He slides into an F. He plays an F and a C. He goes. But the 3rd time he plays an A and a C. And then it slides up. So that over the F7 sounds like this. Again, charts and tabs at MikePachelli.com. If you want to see every single measure, you can download it there. But those are George's fills. Paul McCartney played a wonderful guitar solo on Taxman. I can't help but wonder, was Paul up in master control watching George try to do it, and then after a couple hours George couldn't get it? Paul kind of had George's idea and went down and just perfected it on a couple of takes because, Paul had great ears. Nevertheless, there's different stories about what guitar Paul used on the solo. Some say it was a Fender Esquire, but to my ears it sounds like it's the honk of Paul's Epiphone Casino because of the P90s. Nevertheless, the solo goes like this. Just a hellacious solo, right? Now, a couple of cool things to remember. First, you get like a D octave in triplets moving for the first 3 beats. So you have a... And then the solo is just in pentatonic, in a pentatonic position, like so between D, F, and G. And then these 2 notes, these 2 Ds, make sure you get them on beats 3 and 4, on the downbeat of the 2nd measure. So right, you got. And then a little flat 5 lick into the pentatonic. And then the riff that goes down, that's kind of Indian, it's all on a D chord, and they're basically playing D7 raised 9, which has a dominant 7. But on the way down, Paul uses the the major seventh of D, and on the way up, he uses the dominant seventh. So on the way down, he goes. Hear that? This major seventh on the way down. So. And then the dominant seventh on the way back. And that's what gives it the Indian sound. Back to more of that pentatonic. And then a quick trill. Just so cool. Let me do it very slow for you. Let's see here. If you didn't get it from that, there's charts and tabs available at MikePachelli.com so you can see exactly how it was played. But what a great solo, huh? So great that they use it on the fade out too. Okay, I've put it all together as a sound alike, so let's hear how the parts fit together.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Let me tell you how it will be. There's one for you, 19 for me. 'Cause I'm the taxman. Yeah, I'm the taxman. Should 5% appear too small? Be thankful I don't take it all. 'Cause I'm the taxman. Yeah, I'm the taxman. If you drive a car, I'll tax the street. If you try to sit, I'll tax your seat. If you get too cold, I'll tax the heat. If you take a walk, I'll tax your feet. Cause I'm the taxman. Yeah, I'm the taxman. Don't ask me what I want it for. Mr. Wilson. If you don't want to pay some more. Mr. Heath. 'Cause I'm the taxman. Yeah, I'm the taxman. Now my advice for those who die. Taxman. Declare the pennies on your eyes. Taxman. 'Cause I'm the taxman. Yeah, I'm the taxman. And you're working for no one but taxman.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And like I always suggest, learn all the parts, play along with my sound alike, and you'll get it just like the Beatles. If you do need a little extra help, you can download the charts and tabs at MikePachelli.com. And that's where you could also drop me a line if you care to do that. So have fun playing this great song. Have fun playing the guitar in general, because that's what playing the guitar should be all about. I'm Mike Pachelli, and until next time, thanks for hanging out with me.
Let me tell you how